let's say just a couple words about your first paper to give you some idea of how I'm thinking about the papers, what I was hoping to see, and then what all of you should be keeping in mind as you move forward with uh, this course, but especially with the construction at the end of your paper. So each of you chose a particular issue that is of concern and interest to you. And of course, I'm not limiting what those options are, but remember that the key here in this course is it is a form of injustice that is manifest in the church as opposed to the society. So how does the church need to be reformed in regard to your chosen issue? Now, what this then suggests is, and what we will be doing the next couple weeks, is looking more deeply at ecclesiology. What are the theological grounds that lead us to this position where the church believes it's acceptable to promote, encourage, turn a blind eye to its own injustices? So you will be, and I said this on a number of your papers, you will be wanting to think deeply about those theological grounds. And let me say this, that the church has a fundamental problem historically and in the contemporary period of how it deals with human embodiment, rather than accepting in some ways that God has created these bodies and deemed them very good. We use embodiment as a means of excluding and diminishing. Some of you realize how important our theological anthropology is to the way we think about the church, and who's in and who's appropriate and what is appropriate. And it's very interesting because God is not a physical embodiment, but so many of our judgments are made based upon this physical matter of the human body. Okay, so there's something really important about embodiment, about incarnation, that drives the church, whether it's aware of it or not, to bias, to judgments, and to forms of discrimination. Now, you will want to dig then into those grounds that lie behind the issue and what makes the church think that its own implication in your issue of injustice, what makes the church think that's acceptable to ignore or in fact to promote. Okay, now the second thing is, some of you attended to and some of you did not at all in the paper consider social location and intersectionality. And there's a reason that I included that as part of your first week of the course. And that is because, one, our interest in a particular issue comes out of our social location and often our intersectionality. In other words, many of you wrote about things that are very personal in your life that lead you toward that issue. That's social location in many ways. That's that's guiding and influencing that. But at the same time, you want to think about intersectionality and how that one at times creates the issue that you're interested in, a white male heteronormative kind of church. Those intersections influence for generations what the church teaches, who the church is, okay? And you will want to think about intersectionality in terms of the other perspectives that come into play on your issue. So if you are a white woman, what would, if you're United Methodist, what would the African part of the church be thinking and why? Now, I don't expect you to go through all of that in the final paper, but what I'm trying to suggest is it helps us to think more deeply and open our eyes to some other ways of viewing the issue that we might need to account for. So, for instance, why the whole LGBTQ question in the United Methodist Church is so complicated is that it's more than about the US and our cultural contexts, but once you begin to add in all these global contexts, it's a really messy business. And I think people sometimes can't appreciate the depths of those cultural differences and what that means for negotiating an issue. Okay? I think that's what I'm trying to say. So all of these things you will want to continue to churn on as we move through the coming weeks and as you keep that issue before you. Okay, I know it looks like I'm at the beach, but happy day, happy week, and keep working.